Hi all, welcome back to Make More Bonsai. John here. A long time ago, there were pine trees living in an area that was quite pleasant. Lots of sun, plenty of access to everything they needed. Overall, an awesome place for a tree to do its thing. Occasionally, really aggressive storms would pass through. The wind from some of these storms was sometimes so strong, it would strip the pine of all of their needles. This would be considered bad times for a pine tree. Without those needles, how can it make food for itself through photosynthesis? Many of those pine trees were unable to regrow their needles. Stripped of their energy-producing leaves, they eventually withered away. But the ones that had enough energy stored to regenerate new growth survived and regrew their needles, and it was good times for those trees. The remaining pine survivors were able to create seed and successfully reproduce in that area, with the genetic predisposition to be able to store energy to push out a second round of growth if needed. Soon they were the dominant variety of pine and were able to thrive in that area where others couldn't. At least that's a loosely adapted evolution story about how Pinus thunbergii, also known as Japanese black pine, evolved, as well as other multi-flush pine trees, sort of. Why on earth would I go on about this evolution stuff? A, because it's fun, and 2, not all pine trees can push out a second flush of growth like the Japanese black pine, and it's important to understand that what we are about to do really only applies to species that can produce a second flush of growth. If you attempt to fully remove the new growth on other pines like Japanese white pine or mugo pine, it will weaken the tree. It's an evolutionary trait, like how birds have wings but some don't fly, or some snakes have venom. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's get to the fun. In this session, we're going to encourage energy balance within the tree to assist this pine to produce an even and consistent second flush of growth. By resetting the internal calendar in the tree to produce needles that will have less time to grow long. These smaller needles will be in better proportion within the bonsai design. This will also encourage new buds that will contribute to the density of branches and needles, which will also be shorter as they all have to share the available resources within the pot. That's a mouthful. Let's break this down. In early spring, this pine was full of energy. It stored this energy all fall and winter and was waiting for the days to get longer and warmer. The wait is over and the tree is now pushing out new growth. All of that energy was driven to produce leaf buds. These are called candles because they look like candles. Soon they will begin to unfurl new needles, which will elongate throughout the rest of spring and early summer to be effective collectors of light to convert to food through photosynthesis. Today we are going to remove those candles carefully and even out the volume of existing older needles on the bonsai. This is how to get short proportional needles and short candles and branches on Japanese black pine bonsai. Here's a standard candle of a Japanese black pine that's growing in the ground. Normally they're this long. We are aiming to reduce them to a size more suitable for bonsai like this. You can already see how much smaller the candle is when the tree is growing inside of a container. This is an example of how the tree reacts when it's growing in the ground and has unlimited resources versus when it's growing in a bonsai pot and has limited resources. There is a general reduction already. We're looking to push that further. This is generally referred to as decandling and needle plucking in spring. The most direct statement about decandling is remove all of them. Let's start with one branch. It's important to review each branch you're removing the candles from. If you come across a branch or section that you want to develop more or maybe strengthen, another option may be to remove 1 or 2 candles and let that third one grow out for a season or two to help add energy to that area for future development. It can always be pruned back once it has reached the desired strength the next year. For example, there may be a branch you want to be a bit longer to better fit your design. This is an opportunity to set that plan in motion. A big part of this procedure is to make sure energy goes where we want it to go, so look for those options as you go through the tree. This is a great time to make informed decisions and gain control of the outcome. When you trim the candles, leave a small section of the green growth behind. This will facilitate the formation of that second round of candle buds. Once all of the candles have been taken care of, we now need to balance the volume of needles on each branch. Why? Japanese black pine, and lots of pines like them, can produce a second flush of growth in a year, have a lot of movement through the vascular system, moving resources pretty quickly to fulfill the needs of the branches. We know this because if you were to remove a branch, within minutes you'll see a lot of sap leaking out and dripping and getting everywhere. These immense volumes of resources being pumped through the tree are feeding the new candles being formed throughout the tree. What will be the main factor driving how much goodness goes where? The area that has the most foliage will get the most attention. Any sections that are weaker or may capture less light will receive less attention. The result would be unbalanced growth, which is fine if you're a big old pine growing in the ground somewhere just doing, pine things. But this is a bonsai. We want to see more balanced growth where we want it in order to achieve our design and maintain its health in the design. That is a lot to take in. There are so many moving parts. The solution is very simple, like what we said before. Even out the number of candles. Let's distill that even further now. How many needles do I need to reduce it to? Simple answer? 10 to 12 needle pairs, so like 20 to 24 needles per branch. That's a basic guideline to follow. Keep in mind, 16 pairs are fine. Please don't feel like you actually have to count. Just get a basic idea of what 10 to 12 pairs looks like and reduce them to that. Alright, simple but more useful complete answer. Okay, look for the branch with the weakest growth. When you find it, make note of the volume of needles on that branch. That is the minimum quantity of needles to reduce to in order to match the strongest branch to the weaker branch. Look at the quality of those needles. See if maybe some are bent or have any brown spots or are unhealthy looking. Maybe they're not as green or as shiny as the other needles. Needles like this are not functioning well at collecting light and creating sugar through photosynthesis. They are drawing resources, but aren't returning any benefit to the tree. Removing them will stop the tree from wasting resources on them. Next, go ahead and take off any needles that are on the bottom of the branch. Why? 2 reasons. 1, they will always receive less light compared to the needles on top, so they're less efficient at photosynthesis. We really want the best of the best remaining on the bonsai doing their job. And B, by removing all needles that reside on the bottom of the branch, we better refine the design of the branch and reinforce the overall silhouette of the bonsai. Every branch will have a nice crisp definition along the bottom of the branches. We are creating a well-designed tree. We might as well work toward that goal while we're doing this. Of the remaining needles, try to leave some older ones that live further in on the branch. Create small sections that are bare and small sections that aren't. This will encourage any dormant buds along the length of the branch to emerge, which will help with developing dense small branches. An assortment of 10 to 12 pairs of old and new needles is the final result. Great! Now we have a model branch to work through the rest of the tree to try to match. Take your time and consider all of these things as you work through the tree. This is a kind of spring cleaning, if you will. It's an opportunity to really make the tree the best it can be. This session is intended to truly set the bonsai up for a very successful year. Let's talk about nutrition while the rest of the branches are being worked on. I have been applying fertilizer high in nitrogen to this tree through fall, stopping for winter. Here in Texas, the southern United States, I started fertilizing again in late February, but in cooler regions your timing may be later in the year for this. Japanese black pines start moving resources faster and sooner than a lot of other trees, so this is okay. The timing of application is also an important factor when you're trying to get lots of growth, but also reduce needle size. Fertilizer was applied again in mid-March and again in mid-April, keeping plenty of nitrogen available to the roots for 3 months. In order to fortify this tree with enough oomph, but still limit the growth of the second flush of candles, all of the nitrogen needs to have been washed out of the soil roughly 4 to 5 weeks before removing the candles. So, counting backward from, say, May 15th, I need to stop applying fertilizer by mid-April, 4 to 5 weeks before trimming off the first flush of candles. Your dates may be different depending on what climate you're in, but the timing is the same. Fertilizing will only resume after the second flush of needles have hardened off and are mature. You can tell when they're mature when you see the needles darken and are more shiny and firm to the touch. This could be a few months after you trim off the first round of candles. This year-round process creates conditions that help keep the tree in a healthy state, that not only can maintain itself well, but also able to grow and add new foliage mass. This stability is what allows us and the tree to achieve our goals, a well-designed and healthy bonsai. All of this is made easier to accomplish if you keep notes on what you do and when. There's a link in the description below for our own Bonsai Progress book if you want to help us out by picking one up for yourself, if you think a bonsai-specific tracker book will help you keep an accurate schedule. Here's a fancy QR code, and remember, the link is in the description as well. Thanks for sticking around for that shameless product plug. What have we accomplished in this session? We have worked out a schedule for fortifying this tree with all of the energy it needs to push out 2 rounds of growth while keeping the tree in a healthy state. And by removing excess needles, we've begun the process of balancing out the delivery of energy throughout the tree. Now every branch will get roughly equal proportions of all of the resources needed to make a better looking, healthy bonsai. The expectation is to have an even distribution of new candles and equal strength throughout the tree. New buds will also emerge, offering a lot of new choices to make sound design decisions. That was a lot of background information to sum up decandling and needle plucking in spring. Don't worry, after some experience performing this needle plucking, you will no longer be shocked by the alarming volume of needles you leave behind. Here's something to keep in mind about Japanese black pines. The roots on these pines are thick and coarse. They are really great at storing energy and water. When the pine calls for water and resources, the roots on a healthy tree have them ready to go because it's been well fertilized before this needle plucking. We can return to this Japanese black pine when it's time to review the new round of candles later this year, right here on the Make More Bonsai channel. If you subscribe, you won't miss those videos when they become available, so, subscribe and hit the like button and maybe leave a comment on what you think, because I love to hear from y'all, and it has some kind of magical algorithm effect that makes this appear in more people's suggested feeds, which will help us reach more people who maybe want to make more bonsai. You get the picture. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.